time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Do want to thank R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend, Warsaw, and Fort Wayne. Go to rbcarcompany.com. Of course, mention me, get a free test drive. So I've had a lot of people reach out to me over the past few days, and they've asked a couple of different questions. They've asked about the retention of the Supreme Court justices in the state of Indiana. They've asked about other judicial questions, because judicial questions are usually a very common one for people, but also over and over and over again, the ballot question in Indiana, this whole superintendent of education thing. And, you know, rather than me just constantly responding to everybody, I'm like, you know what? Why don't we just get an expert on the show? So I reached out to State Representative J.D. Prescott, who represents Indiana's 33rd District. J.D., how you doing, man?
Doing well. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm hanging in there. I appreciate the time. I know that this was last minute. I reached out to JD this afternoon, and I'm like, hey, can we get you on to talk about this thing? Because I'm getting tons of questions. I kid you not. I had a sample ballot waiting for me when I walked into the studio today from a coworker. Like, can you explain this to me somehow? And so I just want to have an expert on who can explain it in a way that isn't dumb, like I've been doing apparently, because I'm not getting the message across. So JD Prescott, I don't want to ask that question. What is the question? What is the premise of the question? Why is it worded the way that it's worded? And what information do people need to be able to vote the way that they feel is correct?
Yeah, so the premise of the question is to strike the state superintendent of public instruction from the line of succession for governor. So if there was an absence in both the governor and the lieutenant governor's office, we have a succession plan, a line of succession, and the very last one on that list, and it's actually a temporary line of succession. It's just until the General Assembly could reconvene and then appoint and select a new governor and lieutenant governor and go through that process, but as laid out in our Constitution. But the very last position on that line of succession is the state superintendent of public instruction, which that used to be an elected position. Mm-hmm. That position is no longer in existence. It is now the Secretary of Education. That position was changed before I entered the legislature, but back in 2018, 2017, in that time frame, it was changed. And so as I was reading every year before we take Organization Day, I reread both our state constitution and the United States Constitution. And I was just reading the Constitution. That is odd. We need to fix that because we no longer have a superintendent of public instruction. So simply what this is doing is just striking the superintendent of public instruction from that line of succession for two reasons. One, that position is no longer in existence, so that position is not there. And then the second reason, if we are going to have it be the Secretary of Education be in that line of succession, it's now a appointed position. So I don't believe that we should have an appointed official be in that succession plan when all the rest of them are statewide elected positions. The only exception that would be the Speaker of the House, which is an elected position, but then obviously elected by the General Assembly as well. But the rest of those are all elected positions. So I think that's the premise and the reasoning to strike that from the Constitution.
Yeah, and you know what I'm finding interesting is, like, as I'm emailing people when this comes up and I'm explaining it to them, I still get kind of feedback that it feels like you're taking our choice away. We want to be able to vote for this person, but I'm like, okay, but it's not how it works anymore. The position doesn't exist anymore. You know, just so everybody is crystal clear, and this is what JD is talking about here. The Indiana Constitution says the superintendent of public instruction is in the line of succession. The problem is that we now have a Secretary of Education. That is the position that we currently have. We no longer have a superintendent of public instruction. So again, JD Prescott, who we're talking with from District 33, Indiana State Representative. If, God forbid, something happens and the governor and the lieutenant governor go down, and we have to get to a point where it is going to be whoever is running education in the state of Indiana as that appointed position, but we, on the books, have the superintendent of public instruction in the Constitution, yet that position doesn't exist. It is now the Secretary of Education. That is going to cause a massive legal battle, which can easily blow up and turn really, really ugly very fast, because there will be people who go, well, obviously this means the head of education. And other people will go, that's not what it says. It says this thing. Well, that person doesn't exist, so it should skip over that person and go here. And that would be the big concern, correct?
You're absolutely right. That is the biggest issue with it, and again, it's really just cleaning up that language in the Constitution to align with our current law and how we operate things within our state.
Okay, so
yeah, and this went through two separately elected General Assemblies, as all constitutional amendments shall, and then so this is the ballot referendum question to that to follow up the two separately elected General Assemblies voting on this. Went through both times without any controversy, really just viewed as simple cleanup from that change to just make sure that our Constitution is aligned with how we operate our state.
Now, this, in my mind, probably would not jeopardize the line of succession anyway, just by removing it, because we're talking about the sixth line of succession anyway, because you got the President Pro Tem of the Senate, Speaker of the House, Treasurer, Auditor, Secretary of State, and then you get to this position, which you're proposing we should probably remove anyway. And you said you didn't want to fill that sixth position, and what was the reason behind that again?
So I just didn't see a need to. I mean, Lord willing, I hope we never have to use this piece of the Constitution, or it never comes down to this. We've never went through this process. I don't see the need to have six positions on there. Lord willing, I don't think there will be a need to have a sixth position on there.
Yeah, but I suppose if the legislature felt that there should be one, they could go back and put the appropriate position. Whether it's this position or another one, they could put that in the line of succession with legislation, correct?
Yeah, it could. It'd have to go through a separate constitutional amendment to add one, because you'd be changing the Constitution again. But sure. Yes, it could be changed down the road to add one. Okay,
so just in summary, I just want everybody to understand, again, J.D. Prescott is an Indiana State Representative from District 33. Thank you for your time again. This ballot initiative on the ballot simply says we're going to remove the superintendent of public instruction from the line of succession because that position no longer exists. They're not replacing it with anybody. They're not taking away your ability to choose or to vote for anybody, because that position is no longer an executive position in the state of Indiana. The new position is the Secretary of Education, and it has been for some time now. And so we might as well just clean up the Constitution to alleviate any confusion. God forbid something does happen down the line, because you'll have two sides arguing and fighting over this, and that could lead to much more political upheaval.
That's a spot-on analysis.
Okay. So would your recommendation be then, J.D. Prescott, to vote yes or to vote no on this ballot question?
I'm asking voters to vote yes on this ballot question.
Have you heard a justifiable response from anybody who actually knows the issue? I mean, obviously there's voters who don't know it, and they're getting a little they're freaking out a little bit because they think that maybe the choice or power has been taken away from them. But have you heard any political opposition to this from either political party or a third party, and have they presented anything that you would feel would be a valid reason why this should not be changed?
I have not, and in fact, some of those that have reached out with some concerns, as you mentioned, that just didn't quite understand it. Every time I've talked through and explained the process, after they understand it, then they're on board with voting yes, and they understand the reasoning for so. So no, I have not heard any valid opposition to this proposal.
Okay, and I haven't really seen any strong opposition to it either. I think it's mostly just been constituents who are concerned that maybe something was changing and it could take power and influence away from the voters, and that's really not the case here. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to get an expert on, because I'm kind of like beating my head against the wall trying to explain it. Some people get it, some people don't. So I just figured if I have a representative on who knows the issue and is able to propose and explain it in a very easy and simple way, then I think maybe it'll calm people down. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm a strong constitutional conservative, so I'm always very thoughtful and careful anytime we're wanting to tweak or change the Constitution. And I think this is just a common sense change, just simply because that position no longer exists. We have to make sure that things are in line with the laws that we have in place right now.
See, J.D. Prescott probably was good until he said he was a constitutional conservative. Now I'm going to have a bunch of leftists out there going, don't change it, because he wants to. It's just going to be a visceral reaction. Because everything the other side does must be bad. It doesn't matter if the explanation is dead on. But oh man, so J.D. Prescott,
I had bipartisan support.
Well, you did, and that's the thing too. You go back and you vote. You looked at the voting record.
Assembly too. Bipartisan support. Yeah,
everybody's on board with this, and it really is just cleaning up the language of the Constitution of the state. So, J.D. Prescott again, Indiana representative for District 33. Thank you so much for the time. I'm going to have you on because I want to talk to you about this property tax thing sometime. Maybe later in the week or next week. That sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right,
thank you.
Let's do that. J.D. Prescott, thank you for your time, man. I do appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. Have a good one.
All right, you too. And you can also, I'll put his contact information if you have any additional questions about anything that he's doing or this particular issue. You can obviously go to IndianaHouseRepublicans.com and just search for J.D. Prescott. You can get all of his email and his phone number and all of that. Some of you obviously are not going to be in his district because he's in District 33. But we cover a lot of districts, and our show does get in to some parts of District 33. So it's going to affect some of you, but the ballot question affects everybody. And, because of his experience with this particular question and him leading the charge on this, he was the right guy to bring on and kind of explain it. And yes, there is bipartisan support. So for those of you who are thinking that there might be some shenanigans or something happening here that is eroding the power of the voter, that's not the case. You're simply removing a position from the line of succession that no longer exists and can never take over the line of succession anyway, because there is no longer a superintendent of public instruction. The current position is the Secretary of Education. That is not a part of this. And if you had people, God forbid we got in that scenario where, we're now 6 lines deep, where 5 people have now died. We are sitting here looking at this and saying, well, I guess technically 6 people. Well, obviously they mean the Secretary of Education. But you will have the opposite side who will come out easily and say, no, that's not what the Constitution says. The Constitution says the Superintendent of Public Instruction. Well, that position doesn't exist. And then there's going to be a battle. And there's going to be a fight. And hopefully it'll just be political. But who knows? If we're talking about that many people passing away, who knows what scenario we're talking about there. And it's best just to clean it up, get it off of the books, not have to worry about it, and let the legislature handle a situation like that. God forbid if it ever should arise under the auspices of the rest of the Constitution. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking at your ballot and you go in and you're going to vote, you probably want to vote yes and remove Superintendent of Public Instruction from the gubernatorial line of succession in the state of Indiana, because they can't succeed anyway. They don't exist. Hopefully that clarifies any confusion. If you have any additional questions, you can reach out to me. You can also reach out to J.D. Prescott. And again, I'll put his contact information and his social media and things like that in the daily show prep, which you can get every single day at btmedia.news. We got more coming up. You're listening to The Burning Truth.
Podcasts by Federated Media.